Ibn Almaghazi, stand-up comedy. There was a place in times of old where lived a comedian named Ibn Almaghazi who made his living by performing on the bustling streets of Baghdad. So clever was this comedian and so comic were his jokes and stories that any and all who heard him would shake up with laughter. One day, during the regime of the Khalifa al-Muwatadid, Ibn al-Maghazali stood near the entrance to the Khalifa's court and spun his stories and told his jokes. Before long, he had many of al-Muwatadid's attendants and courtiers gasping with laughter. One attendant in particular was quite taken with Ibn al-Maghazali's stories and jokes and lingered for a long time before finally leaving to attend the Khalifa. Not long after the attendant left, he returned, caught hold of Ibn al-Maghazali's arm and said in a quiet voice, "When I left, I went to wait on Khalifa al-Muwatadid. As I stood before him, I remembered one of your stories and couldn't help laughing. The Khalifa saw me and was most displeased. He demanded to know what I found so amusing. So I told him about you and your performance and how I simply couldn't help laughing. Now, he was ordered me to bring you before him and has promised me half of any payment he gives you." Ibn al-Maghazali felt elated by this fortunate turn of events, but as a poor street performer he hoped to go home with more than just half of the payment. In, in wheedling tone he appealed to the attendant. "My lord, I am a weak and poor man. I believe God has sent you to me as a gift. If you must take some of the payment, would you be kind enough to only take a quarter or sixth?" The attendant had no intention of losing a single coin that he felt was his due, so he refused and insisted on half of whatever the Khalifa gave Ibn al-Maghazali. Not wishing to anger the greedy attendant and thus lose his opportunity to perform before the Khalifa, Ibn al-Maghazali agreed to give him half of whatever the Khalifa gave him. Satisfied, the attendant escorted Ibn al-Maghazali inside. Ibn al-Maghazali stood before the Khalifa, respectfully greeted him, and was politely greeted in return. Then Ibn al-Maghazali stood and waited silently while the Khalifa finished reading several pages from a book he held. A few minutes later, the Khalifa looked up and said in a bossy tones, "You are Ibn al-Maghazali?" "Yes, O Prince of the Believers," Ibn al-Maghazali replied humbly, feeling a little anxious at the sight of the Khalifa's frowning face. "I was told you tell amusing stories and recount strange and rare tales," the Khalifa prompted. "Yes, O Prince of the Believers," Ibn al-Maghazali said, attempting to smile willingly at the displeased Khalifa. "Necessity is the mother of invention. I gather crowds and try to become dear to their hearts with my stories, hoping to live off of their generous contributions." Thoroughly unimpressed, the Khalifa coldly declared, "Then tell me your tales and show me your arts. If you make me laugh, I will reward you with 500 dirhams. But if you fail to make me laugh, what will you give me?" "I have nothing but my backside," Ibn al-Maghazali said with a cheeky grin. "You may whip me as much as you choose with whatever you choose." The Khalifa's reply was unamused. "I agree. If I laugh, then I will give you what I promised you. If I don't laugh, then I will whip you with that whip on the wall there, 10 times." Ibn al-Maghazali considered the Khalifa's word for a moment but then dismissed any disquiet he may have felt. He told himself that a Khalifa would not hit very hard, so he had nothing to fear, really. Then he turned and saw that the whip seemed to be hollow, and he found himself worrying about the consequences if he could not make the Khalifa laugh. It makes no difference, he told himself. I will make him laugh and get the dirhams. The whip will never be used. Ibn al-Maghazli stood before the Khalifa and started to tell his tales. He spoke of Bedouins and judges and scientists. He told jokes and puns and used quips. He made up silly tales and he recounted hilarious true stories. Everyone at the Khalifa's court fled to conceal uncontrollable fits of laughter, and even the servants slipped away to laugh until they cried. None of them wished to show their rejoicing to the angry Khalifa. In contrast, although Ibn al-Maghazli's hilarious performance, the Khalifa al-Mu'tadid did not so much as twitch his lips. With a sinking heart, Ibn al-Maghazli noted the Khalifa's determination not to laugh. Desperate now and thinking of that strange whip hanging on the wall, he decided to try the last trick. Addressing himself to the stone-faced Khalifa, Ibn al-Maghazli explained, by God, I have exhausted my store of jokes and tales. My head is splitting, my skills have failed me, and I have never seen your like. But I do have one last joke in mind. Tell me, ordered the apparently bored Khalifa. O Prince of Believers, you have promised to whip me 10 times in place of the payment. I now humbly ask you to double it. Ibn al-Maghazli said unexpectedly. The Khalifa struggled mightily and just managed to prevent himself from laughing. Instead, he said to Ibn al-Maghazli, agreed. Then he addressed himself to one of his youthful servants, boy, bring me the whip. Ibn al-Maghazli decided to take his stripes like a man, so he offered up his flinching backside just as he had agreed. When the whip landed on his backside for the first time, Ibn al-Maghazli inhaled sharply because he felt as though a building has been dropped on him. He realized then that the whip had seemed hollow because it was the rawhide whip had been wrapped around a line of small rounded pebbles. As the Khalifa, who diligently had been insulted by a laughing attendant, landed stripe after stripe on Ibn al-Maghazli's backside. The hapless comedian's ears rang and he felt as though he were going to faint. After the whip he had landed for the 10th time, Ibn al-Maghazli called out in a shrill voice, my lord, a word. The Khalifa lowered the whip and said, speak. My lord, Ibn al-Maghazli began, there is nothing in this world better than honesty, or worse than betrayal. I have promised your attendant half of whatever you give me, and you, O Prince of Believers, out of your generosity and kindness have agreed to double my reward. Now you have given me half of it, the rest belongs by right to your attendant. As soon as the Khalifa heard that, he could no longer control his mirth, and he laughed and laughed and laughed. All of Ibn al-Maghazli's jokes and tales, which he had so determinedly not laughed at, now flew through the Khalifa's mind, and he laughed at them too until the tears were streaming down his face and he was holding his sides, gasping for air. Eventually, the Khalifa recovered from his laughing fit, and he ordered his attendant be brought before him, and in turn whipped on the backside. Appalled, the attendant said, "O Prince of the believers, why am I being punished? What crime have I committed?" Ibn al-Maghazli quickly interrupted, "This is my reward, and you are my partner. I have already received my half, and now it is time for you to receive your half, just as we agreed." Unable to object, the attendant had to present his own reluctant backside and submit to 10 lashes by the same whip. As he was receiving his half of the reward, Ibn al-Maghazli spoke to him. "I told you I was poor and needed the money, but you insisted on your half. If I had known that the Prince of the believers, God save him, gave out whips as reward, I would have given you all of the reward." The Khalifa could not help but laugh at Ibn al-Maghazli capering and words. Once the attendant had received his 10 lashes, Ibn al-Maghazli had ceased his antics and the Khalifa had stopped laughing. The no longer affronted Khalifa produced a bag filled with 500 dirhams. "I had prepared this bag for you, but your actions have produced a partner you will have to share it with," the Khalifa teased Ibn al-Maghazli. "O Prince of the believers, where, where would the honesty be in that?" Ibn al-Maghazli replied, "Not at all bothered. I only wish you would give all of the dirhams in that bag to your attendant and then give him another 10 lashes in addition to the 10 he has already received. As far as I am concerned, he can have the entirety of this reward." The Khalifa al-Mu'tadid laughed again and had the financial reward equally divided between the two men just as the stinging reward had been. Then, with a wide smile, the Khalifa dismissed both men.